All right, peace and blessings. Assalamu alaikum, shalom. Welcome, 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 everyone. We are back. We are live with our topic today: Black Power Reloaded, mobilizing for autonomy in the 21st century. We already got our people showing up in the house. Peace and blessings, Twin Pyramid. We're glad you're here.
Peace, peace.
Matt 285, peace and blessings. We're glad you're here. All right, all righty, all righty. And those that are watching but hadn't said anything in the chat, peace and blessings, we are glad you are here as well. Let me
Yes, sir.
get this started up here. I forgot to get this set up while we were talking. Okay, here we go. So today our program, we're going to be looking at Black Power and coming to the understanding of whether or not Black Power is something that is still relevant today. Dealing with Black Power, some people think is just a historic relic that is no longer relevant, that the framework for Black liberation today has definitely changed. Doc, what do you say? First of all, what is Black Power?
You know, I'm getting ready to. If you give me 1 second, I am going to pull up what I would argue is the greatest definition that we have for Black Power. If I can figure out how to get to the Facebook group. I'm looking at. I can't navigate my way there apparently. Let me. You know, I wouldn't be able to find it. Let me find it real quick.
Okay.
And because it's one of the greatest definitions of Black Power. I think I got a shortcut to finding it actually. Ironically, it's going to be, if I'm thinking right, yep, it's something I wrote 5 years ago on manhood, race, and culture. It was a part of my book on the Panthers and my doctoral dissertation. But the definition, and it's kind of, always been the accepted one that Charles V. Hamilton and Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture gave out goes as follows. Black Power is concerned with organizing the rage of Black people. Black Power, number one, deals with the obviously growing alienation of Black people and their distrust of the institutions of this society. Two, works to create new values and to build a new sense of community and of belonging. And three, works to establish legitimate new institutions that make participants, not recipients, out of a people traditionally excluded from the fundamentally racist processes of this country. The concept of Black Power rests on a fundamental premise. Before a group can enter the open society, it must first close ranks. By this, we mean group solidarity is necessary before a group can operate effectively from a bargaining position of strength in a pluralistic society. Traditionally, each new ethnic group in this society has found the route to social and political viability through the organization of its own institutions with which to represent its needs within a larger society. The American melting pot has not melted. Italians vote for Rubino over O'Brien, Irish for Murphy over Goldberg, etc. So, for my money, that still is relevant, applicable. One could argue that the recent presidential election with Kamala Harris could have utilized that as a rallying point for Black America. That groups have to, especially when you're dealing with a pluralistic society, groups need to join together for their own good, their own interests. Bless you. It's one
Thank
of
you.
the it's one of the significant problems that we have in regards to our community, that we don't even make it to the ballot box or to the political debate with solidarity. We've been peeled off with, ironically, identity politics. You have the
Mm,
LGBTQ parts of our community peeled off. You have the women peeled off. The women aren't going to work with the men. And now, you have men who have reacted. And so at the end of all that infighting that we have, what's laying on the ground, laying at our feet, and it's Black power, the potential for Black power.
mm, definitely, definitely. Is there a difference between freedom and liberation?
I believe that freedom comes from liberation. That liberation is in many ways breaking the chains, regardless of if those chains are political, economic, social, cultural. And freedom is what you do after you break those chains. It's what you experience and what you live after. But to be honest with you, it's very difficult for me to even envision the concept of freedom,
Mm,
because my entire existence, from the moment I hit, what did we called it, safety town.
mhm.
We had this little, it was a preschool thing called Safety Town. From my first engagement with the outside world to this moment right here, it's always been a fight for liberation. And very, very much so, like Harriet Tubman, many of these Negroes that I didn't run across don't even know that they're still enslaved, that they're still oppressed. And they look
Mhm.
at me like I'm the one with the problem.
Mhm. Definitely. I did some studying on the two, and some said that freedom, they gave the example that freedom is you're out of you're free from jail. They open the cage and you're walked out. Your freedom. But your liberation is when you're building the things that you need in society
The
to
process,
stay free.
yeah, the process of becoming free, the
Hmm.
operationalization of freedom. Because
Hmm.
in many ways, when you're talking about the concept of freedom, it's very close to me, very similar to me, to how we'll hear people, if someone is murdered
Hmm.
unjustly, we will hear people come out and they'll say, we can look at the Michael Brown thing, we can look at the George Floyd thing.
Hmm.
And people, after the trial and after the law enforcement officers are in many ways convicted, they'll say, well, at least we got justice. That's not justice.
Hmm.
Justice would be Michael Brown or George Floyd getting out their grave, and this person who took their life replacing them in the land of the dead. So
Hmm.
freedom in many ways is that way. And I believe that when you begin to talk to our people, especially those who do not have many financial resources, they believe that freedom lies in what they have in their pocket. And really all money does is it gives you choices and opportunities. It doesn't give you freedom. And it's one of the things, if you look at many of these Hollywood stars, look at Monique, okay, internationally known, what have you, and she still catches hell from Black and white folk in her industry. So the idea of operationalizing and enjoying freedom is something that the only Black person that I have ever even heard of who could really lay a claim, and this will be ironic, that he was free, is Huey P. Newton.
Hmm.
Huey's the only one. because he had developed a life system where he didn't work. He had women who took care of him. He had, women who cooked for him. He didn't have any bills because he lived in many ways that loosey goosey 60s counterculture California life.
Mm. But
But
Doc, even in that though, could we really say that he was free because he
no,
was still in an oppressive system, though?
no, he wasn't free. I mean, and that's why I said it's ironic to be able to say that, to use his name, um,
Mm-hmm.
because this is a man who was on death row in California.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So no, he wasn't free. He wasn't free at all, despite not having to go to a 9 to 5.
Right, right. Why do you think that is not taught about freedom and liberation as we're breaking it down here today?
But these are what I would argue are heavy liberation topics that most people not only can't have a discussion about them, they're not even aware of these types of matters.
Mm-hmm.
And Lupe Fiasco, a great rapper out of Chicago, Lupe has this wonderful song called "Dumb It Down," where he says that's what people have were asking him to do with his lyrical content. I believe that throughout our entire process of so-called educating our youth, we dumb it down. And when you have a dumbed down youth population, Lord knows they're going to matriculate into adults, and that's going to be dumbed down. They're going to be dumbed down as adults as well. I was looking at Conor McGregor, the
Mm-hmm.
UFC fighter, and Conor McGregor says that he's working on a great big contract, and he's going to make tens of millions of dollars and what have you. He says, "Don't worry about the UFC. I'm not negotiating with the UFC." He says,
Mm-hmm.
"I'm actually negotiating with the White House." And I think the early tentative plan is to have a UFC event at the White House. Okay.
Really?
Probably in that big grand ballroom that this fool is actually trying to make. But in saying that, many of the people that we deal with, many of the people that we are forced to call countrymen, because we were born in the same country, these people are no different from the fickle horde that you saw in Rome. They wanted gladiator games. They didn't want to have, and they're looking for a release. And that release is something to get their mind off of their life, get their mind off of their troubles and their worries. And while they're looking away, they are, for intents and purposes, having their liberties, their freedom just stripped away from them and curtailed.
Wow.
Because let's be clear that freedom has gradients. There are gradients to freedom. Think about your boy Puff right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? How free would Puff feel if he had house arrest?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in many ways, when you're looking at our society, many people are on extreme house arrest. They're so poor that they can't go on a trip. They can't. Some people can't even make it to work.
Exactly.
So are they free? No, they're not free. But they're a lot more freer than Puff gonna be in a penitentiary.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm honestly, I'm surprised they only gave him 4 years and 2 months. I thought maybe he was going to get a little bit more than that.
When they start talking about the Mann Act, I was like, oh, they're getting ready to Jack Johnson, the brother.
Exactly.
That Mann Act, boy, they keep that in their back pocket.
So, Doc, briefly discuss, how did Black Power come to be such a popular phrase? And I know, I think it was last week or week before, you stated that it wasn't Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, who invented or came up with the term Black Power. It was somebody else, but Stokely is the one that made it popular. And I
Yeah,
couldn't remember that guy's name.
Willie Mukasa Ricks,
Mm,
one of the biggest characters that you will ever come across. In Willie Mukasa Ricks is that is my man. Okay, we actually met at a Black Power conference in being held by Jeffrey Oakbar at the University of Connecticut. It's probably about 15 years ago. And you know how you get with somebody and you just click with them. We we,
right.
we just clicked. And Willie Ricks is he's a down home boy, and he, old country boy, talk crazy to you, all of that. I'll tell you a quick Willie Ricks story to sort of frame who he is. I brought him to my school so that he could.
Hmm.
I wanted the brother to be able to talk to my students and what have you. And so he agrees to come. He gets out there, and I can tell you exactly. I can't tell you the year, but I can
Hmm.
tell you what had just happened. It was when Justin Timberlake had grabbed Janet Jackson's garment at the Super Bowl.
Mm.
Her
Okay.
breast fell out. Okay. Now, think about being at a dinner. A president's there. The bigwigs of the administration are there. They come out when somebody notable is there, and that topic came up. And
Mm.
Willie Ricks said, "I don't know what the big deal was. It wasn't nothing but a black titty. It made my mouth water." I had to kick him under the table. Okay. And
Mm.
instead
Mm.
of just taking the kick silently, Willie Ricks shouts out, "Man, don't you kick me no more." Okay. So that's who we talking about. Okay. Um,
Wow.
Mukasa, if I had my hard drive hooked up, I could actually show you some footage of this wild brother. But he's a tremendous person. But what happened with the 1960s iteration of Black Power? Got to remember that Black folk have been fighting for the idea of integration since, one could argue, 1865, since they went free.
Right.
But when you're talking about more contemporary times, we see the first major case win that we've seen since what, 1896, when we lost the Plessy case, where the nation sets up separate but equal as constitutional.
Hmm.
We don't see a really any movement in the courts until Charles Hamilton Houston takes on the Heman Sweat case and actually wins. And the Heman Sweat case is rolled into another case, another case, another case, until we get Brown in 1954. Once we get Brown, um, we fast forward to JFK's assassination, the March on Washington, and 64, 65, LBJ is president. He signs the Civil Rights Act in 64, the Voting Rights Act in 65. And then what's happened about 7 days later? So we have a situation where Black folk are disenchanted with the idea of integration. It's very clear to them that, and James Baldwin talked about this. Baldwin says, and King says this as well after Baldwin said it. He says, "I feel like I'm integrating into a burning house." So Black folk are questioning the idea of even integration. And the final straw is going to be when we have James Meredith trying to do a march against fear. Meredith being the gentleman who integrated Ole Miss. And Meredith gets shot. He's trying to walk from Memphis to his hometown in Jackson, but Meredith gets shot on the first day of that walk. And the
Hmm.
initial reports are that Meredith was dead. He's not dead. He's actually in Memphis, Tennessee, recuperating in a hospital. But it sets the stage for the last major civil rights march. Okay, because the civil rights activists decided that we have to complete the march, because if we fail to complete the march, the message will have been sent that all you have to do to curtail Black protest is to get ultra violent with them, and then they'll stop. And nobody, of course, wanted that message to be put out there. However, it's during the continuation of that march, and Stokely Stokely's on camera talking about this, because many people say, no, 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 it was Stokely, it was Stokely. No, I can show you footage of Stokely saying that it was Willie Ricks. What ends up happening is that they're continuing the march. And one of the interesting things about Mississippi and the civil rights movement is that different groups owned different areas.
Mhm.
And as the march is approaching Greenwood, which is a SNCC area, King had to leave, as he always did. King was always going and doing, he had to do meet the press or something like that. So he
Mhm.
leaves the march. The marchers are going to get attacked. Stokely Carmichael is going to be put in jail. Willie Ricks, and Ricks's official job with SNCC was that he was an advanced scout, kind of an advanced organizer. And
Mm.
when he got to Greenwood, Willie Ricks decided that he's going to change the slogan
Mhm.
from Freedom Now to Black Power, and he does it. And so when Stokely comes out, he's taught them, the people in Greenwood. He teaches them the slogan, the chant. What do you want? Black Power. When do you want it now? So when Stokely comes out, and Ricks had already told Stokely, he said, "Listen, let them arrest you, but when you come out, you'll give the speech." There in Greenwood, the people have been prepped already. Stokely got up there and said, "What do you want?" And they say, "Black Power." And
Mm.
so that's kind of the official debut. And that two-word phrase is going to separate the entire movement. You got to remember, the civil rights movement was still interracial. And so when Black Powers debuted, the white folk felt uncomfortable and the white folk left. The white folk went and created their own movements, the women's rights movement, feminism, anti-Vietnam, all of these different movements, all of them grew out of the civil rights movement, the same way that Black Power grew out of it.
Mm. Interesting. Now, to my understanding, the only group or the only people who ever really showcased real Black power was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the Nation of Islam.
Mm,
When we look at what they were able to do under that same, well, not under the same, but built their own system, built their own reality, and lived in it, and also had that militant self-defense mechanism with it. Why is not the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam given that prominence in our community to know that Black power is what they were exhibiting?
because you guys, the Nation of Islam, in many ways, they are for outsiders, they are viewed almost like the Amish or like the Mennonites. You guys are insular. You stay within yourself. You have your own. And then the other thing that can never be discounted for when people are talking about Black Power is Malcolm's demise. Many people bypass the Nation of Islam, and it's an amazing thing when you really think about it. That here you have an organization like the Nation of Islam that built Malcolm being left out completely from discussions about Black Power. And who do Black Power leaders, Black Powerites, I don't care which one you point to, who do they all point towards as in many ways their leader, their spiritual father? It's Malcolm.
Mhm.
Okay, it's Malcolm. But I think that what you're highlighting is, number one, is valid and true, but at the exact same time, it's it's more about failing to answer that question. And the question is this: after all the rhetoric dies down, after all the emotionalism is peeled away, what do you do now? Because it's easy to get Black folks emotional and to get them, amped up talking about white folk and how wrong they are and this and that. But when you get past that and you begin to talk about institution building, and that's why I put two organizations up there as far as institution building, and they're very different from each other. One is the Nation of Islam, and the other one is the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, because you're seeing the Panthers create their own school. You're seeing the Panthers in many ways kind of siphon and cordon off, although they're not necessarily creating businesses, they're forcing those businesses to give money to those poor Black folk who have patronized them for decades, if not centuries.
We can't hear you, Doc. Something happened to did you mute yourself?
No, I didn't mute myself. I certainly didn't mute myself. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. I don't know what that was. But the two organizations, I ended by saying the two organizations are the Nation of Islam and the Black Panther Party. That here you have both of those institutions, those organizations create institutions. The Panthers had the Panther School, where they had the Panther Cubs and things like that, free breakfast for children programs. So they're doing some things. However, the Nation of Islam has what could be argued to be a captive community of believers, of followers who are going to support the endeavors of the Nation of Islam. And the Panthers don't necessarily have that. You have people who are sympathizers and hangers on of the Panthers, but they're not devout supporters of the Panthers necessarily. I think those two things can be misconstrued. Having someone who is supportive and sympathetic, empathetic even, of your cause and what it is that you're attempting to do, that's a far cry from what we see within the Nation of Islam, which in many ways is one could argue that they're lockstep, like a military, like a Black army, that are going to do. The Panthers are not like that. And when you really think about so much of the Panther history, one has to kind of say at the same time that where the Nation of Islam goes in and reforms, because in many ways they're pulling from the same populations. Okay.
Right.
The Nation of Islam is pulling a lot of members out of prison. The Nation of Islam, the Black Panther Party, they'll tell you that they got a lot of their guys. They didn't have an issue with carrying guns because they was already gangbanging. They was already carrying guns already. So you have those two populations, but now the question becomes, what is the process? And is it even a goal to get that rah out of them and instill some discipline and things like that? The Nation of Islam would definitely be considered the most successful of any Black organization in regards to doing that, even more successful than the Black church, because the Black church is not reaching out specifically for that demographic.
Definitely. And I've been to the National African American Museum in DC. And I have to go back because I ran out of time. I didn't have enough time to see every part of it. But what I learned while I was there, and I saw this as well in the museum in Memphis where Dr. King was killed.
Lorraine Motel.
Yes, sir. That
when were you there?
At the Lorraine Motel?
Yeah.
I was there. I think it was
like how many years ago?
Maybe 4, 5 years ago.
Okay. I got a question. Is that lady still out there?
Yeah.
She's still out there.
She's still out there protesting.
That is amazing.
Yeah, I actually took a picture with her.
Yeah, she was out there. She was out there in like the 70s and 80s.
Exactly.
She's still out there.
She
Wow.
is still out there.
Wow.
Yes. Mhm. Yep, she's still out there, and it's really amazing. Her dedication,
Yeah.
and she took the time out to talk with us and everything, and really broke it down.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that we can never forget, because it's not publicized that the King family did not want,
Yeah.
to
I mean,
be no music. They didn't want that.
yeah. I mean, that's the reason that I had to ask.
Mhm.
Somebody that's been there, is she still there?
Mhm. Yeah. So they're very dedicated to her mission.
Wow.
But both of the museums paid high reverence to the Nation of Islam.
Hmm.
The one in DC went in more detail, but they really shocking for me, because when you think of something that the government is funding, and they put the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Master Muhammad, Master Farrakhan, put them on a pedestal, then it's really shocking. I didn't even expect to really see them, to see the Nation of Islam in either museum,
Oh,
but when I saw in both, I was really shocked.
yeah, but I think that what we have been blessed with, if we can use that terminology, is a government that just provided money for institutions and what have you, and basically said, look, you got this pot of money, this grant money, what have you. You do, you hire who you need to hire, and you have these curators, these librarians, these public historians who put these exhibits together. We ain't got that no more. You got somebody who feels as if they can let him walk through there and see those things, and in many ways, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
He's gonna go ziggity boo crazy up in there, and you're gonna walk through, and you're gonna be like, man, is Africa? It's gonna be so whitewashed, they ain't gonna even have John Brown in there.
Hmm.
So that's been a sort of a hidden blessing for presidents who were actually busy doing something versus what we got now.
Mm. Your mic keep going out, Doc.
Hmm.
See, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Okay.
But before that, there was two
Okay.
sections where I couldn't hear what you were saying.
Okay. I don't know what that's about. But it's a blessing. It was a blessing, a unrecognized blessing for us to have presidents who are actually doing something important versus what we got right now. Someone who appears that like they ain't got nothing to do in the world outside of trying, start fires to keep you from talking about, them files.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. See, I can't hear you again.
Okay, I'm not saying anything right now.
I can see your mouth moving, but
Oh, okay.
hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So now the core tenets of Black Power, would it be racial pride, cultural nationalism, self-determination, autonomy, economic empowerment, and militant self-defense? Would you say that is the core of Black Power?
No, you know what? I disagree with that. I mean, I can't. I'm not a cultural nationalist,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of the sticking points I've often had with other nationalist brothers. That I'm not a cultural nationalist. That's not my wheelhouse. That's not how, you know. I've never been a cultural nationalist, and there's a part of me that kind of looks at it as being kind of kooky
Mm-hmm.
and not a part of the path to liberation.
Okay.
And that's where I divert from a lot of brothers. I'm what they would refer to as a revolutionary nationalist, who
Mm-hmm.
is seeking to change institutions, who is seeking to if nothing else, singing to in every way kind of bring a tangible change to America,
Mhm.
not just a cultural change where, you know, we go and we celebrate Kwanzaa. Okay, if you want to celebrate Kwanzaa, go ahead. You know, Kuji Chagalia, my brother. Uh,
Mhm.
but as to if that's going to make even a small dent in what we're suffering under,
Mhm.
I don't believe so.
But in the terms of Black Power, when we're talking cultural nationalism, because we don't want to take I'm in agreement with you. I don't want to talk no Coogee Jackalia either. Fuck that bullshit. CIA shit to the side. But our own culture, our own way of being our true selves. So in building Black Power, you have to have your own culture in that mix. What do you think about that?
Yeah, yeah, I agree with what you're saying as
Mm-hmm.
far as that goes. But the idea of forging your own culture and defining your own culture. I was speaking about this a couple of days ago. Far too frequently, it looks as if what Black folk are talking about as far as culture
Mm-hmm.
is what we see exhibited on YouTube when
Mm-hmm.
somebody Black gets stopped by the police or somebody Black in Walmart get caught shoplifting and they wow out.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
disagree with that being Black culture. I don't believe that's a personification of Black culture. In the
Mm-hmm.
same way that I don't believe that this hodgepodge mix of different African cultural traditions and dress and ideas reflects the Black experience. I'm,
Mm-hmm.
what is a putting on a dashiki going to do for you?
Right.
You know, and it is, you know, I get trying to develop some ties and some roots to Aki Bulan, but at the
Mm-hmm.
exact same time, is that going to free you? Is that a part of what's going to free you? And I just argue it's not.
Mm-hmm. So in this context, though, of setting up Black Power and understanding the core tenets of it,
Hmm.
we know we have to be able to create our own culture, how we see things, how we do things. So that part of cultural nationalism, and before let me back up and let's deal with Tranquil's question
Hmm.
that he asked you first. Where he asked you, what does cultural nationalist mean? Let's let you deal with that first, and then we'll go into
Well,
my question.
when we're talking about people who are cultural nationalists, these are people who have become very steeped in the idea of a lost African tradition, some lost African roots and African ties. And they will go to extreme lengths to go ahead and, in many ways, reestablish, if we can utilize that word, reestablish ties with a distant past that they don't know. It's not rooted in anything specific. It's not rooted in anything that you could go to any land and say, well, yeah, I'm from here. And woody woo 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 woo. So for me, it's dress, it's speech, it's language, it's music, it's culture.
Mhm.
Okay. Will that culture spill over into liberation? I've never seen it do that. I've seen Black folk be able to create what could best be termed safe spaces for them to come together and have celebrations, to have meals and performances, artsy performances, and what have you. But as to if that's going to, no, it's not going to. So when we're talking about cultural nationalists, we're talking about people who become steeped in those types of things. When we're talking about revolutionary nationalists, we're talking about people who are actively seeking ways and paths to tangibly improve the marginalized position that we've seen our people in for far too long.
Okay. And so going back to the core tenets of Black Power is that the cultural nationalism that we have to have, which would exclude what people see on YouTube as those examples that you were given, that we would have to create our own culture, our own way.
See, you're saying something different from what I think you mean.
Okay.
See, you said cultural nationalism, and then just right now you talked about culture.
Mm-hmm.
Those are two very different things.
Okay.
Okay. So if we're talking about a reformation of Black culture,
Mm-hmm.
that's something totally different from the idea of cultural nationalism.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the reforming, the shaping of culture, that would fall directly into the wheelhouse of revolutionary nationalism,
Mm-hmm.
because we're talking about taking over our schools.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about it's Malcolm's definition that Black folks should control the politics, the politicians, the economy, and the education of their community, just like every other group does.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're talking about, and a part of that is a forming of a culture that, if we're being honest, works for Black folk
Mm-hmm.
and advances Black folk. Let's be very clear about that. Much of what you'll see when you're dealing with those who are adherents to the idea of cultural nationalism, much of that is a part of a withdrawal from American society.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have something that's going on right now, and they refer to it as I think they call it the Crown Act, where it is now illegal for
Mm-hmm.
them to discriminate against you based upon your hair. And I had a back and forth with some students, and they was like, "That's illegal for them to do." I said, "You think that they're gonna come forward and say that that's the reason why they didn't hire you? That's the reason why they didn't bring you in there?" They'll never tell you that,
Mm-hmm.
but you won't get that position. You won't get that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some limits to it, and the idea that in this Western society that we're living in, that you're going to be able to introduce some of these tenets of cultural nationalism, some of these manifestations of it,
Mm-hmm.
and be able to survive is foolish. It's foolhardy. I would say it's foolhardy.
So you're saying that to have Black power in America, you're saying that's foolhardy?
No, the idea that you can go down to a job with
Mm-hmm.
your hair any kind of way you want to, with some
Okay.
sandals on, with some, smelling like musk or whatever, sandalwood and musk and all
Mm-hmm.
of that, with a dashiki on, talking about, well, yeah, I'm here to work. This society is not going to accept that. Now, if you can break off and find land in a way for you to employ yourself and to support yourself and what have you, and y'all want to do that over there, have at it. But
Mm-hmm.
within this present context, I see it as a lot of cowardly behavior,
Mm-hmm.
a refusal to get in the trenches with people who have oppressed us for so long.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So, Doc, there's different movements that use the term power, and it's, for one thing, for me, is, when you hear the KKK yell and screaming white power, is like, what the fuck are you saying? Y'all are in power. Why do you have to scream out this white power? But historically, how did the Black Power definition of power fundamentally differ from the liberal or integrationist definition of power?
Well, I mean, the idea of power. If we're defining power,
Mhm.
and I'm sure that you will appreciate this. Um, Russ Grimm, Joe Jacoby, um, the Redskins, the Hawks.
Mhm.
They asked them, "What is power?" And one of them said, "Listen, power is the ability to make something behave in a manner that it doesn't want to, and it's not in its best interest." So
Mm.
when I hit you and I'm pushing you, I know
Mhm.
you don't want to go that way, but you're going that way because I have more power than you. I'm going to make you. That's in a nutshell what it is that we're talking about when we talk about power. So
Mm.
now the question becomes, do you have the power to number one, resist somebody attempting to exert power against you? That's number one. Number
Right.
two, do you have the power and the ability to make that thing, your opponent, behave in a way, act in a way that is not beneficial to them? And one of the central problems that we've had, and we talk around this and we talk about this all the time,
Mhm.
that in America, solidarity counts for something, numbers count for something. Okay. When you're
Mhm.
dealing with a quote unquote diverse nation, solidarity means something. Look back to the definition of Black Power that Charles B. Hamilton and Stokely Carmichael gave us. Okay. Group solidarity. One of the foremost problems, and one of the reasons why our discussion of Black Power in regards to Black people has to be so disjointed, is that our people couldn't even settle upon what Black Power was. It
Mm.
remained undefined. And in many ways, it was of no use beyond sneaking up on white folk and scaring them and whispering in their ear, Black Power.
Mm.
Because we never came up with, and that's why I rely upon Hamilton and Carmichael's definition, because it was the most public one. But you have a whole lot of other things that are going on with Black folk. And one of them, quite simply, is that we don't want to work with each other. We don't want cooperation with each other. Now,
Mhm.
if you want to follow what my plan is, then come on and roll with it. But I'm not going to dare get down with your plan. And it's how we end up with a group like us, Milana Karinga's group, killing
Mhm.
Panthers. Let's be clear about that.
Mm.
Because there is no general agreement of even what winning is for us. We can't even agree on that. Okay. How can you not agree on winning? It's like us going ahead and we're going to travel in different cars, and you trying to go to Toronto and I'm trying to go to the Bay Area.
Mhm.
We have to agree upon what the ultimate destination is, and nail it down in a way that is not so broad that anything could fit in it. Freedom, justice, and equality. That's what we want. What does that mean? Define that, and then maybe we can talk about how do we get there.
Mhm.
But as long as you're using large, broad terms, that anything it allows people, and I argue that this is in many ways Black folks' favorite activity. They enjoy having mental masturbation sessions, and one could in many ways argue, shit is fantasy for y'all.
Mhm.
I ain't really doing this, And when you mix and when you sprinkle in the fact of the majority of Black folk are white minded, they don't even love each other.
Right. Right. Mm. 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 So what about the liberal and the integrationists? What would you how would you define how would you say they define power to be?
Well, I wouldn't. I guess I could separate liberals from the integrationists, but I
Mhm.
won't. Not here, because I don't think that there's much difference between the two. When you're talking about the idea of integrationist in power. Their idea of power is actually integrating white society, but they don't look at it as white society. They look at it that they're integrating America, a
Mhm.
colorblind society, and what have you. Despite there never being a moment in this nation's history where it's been colorblind. There's never been a moment where one could argue, well, this group, they treated everyone the same as they treated their group. You can't point to that in this nation. You just can't. So their idea of power is actually going to be um, getting jobs and working for white folk. Never with the idea of doing what other groups have done. And that idea of what other groups have actually done is going into other institutions and companies with an understanding, a larger goal. And that larger goal is actually, I'm going to have my own. I'm going to make my own. I'm going to learn what y'all do, how y'all do it. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to service my community and my people with that. Integrationists are not looking at that. And I've talked about this several times in this space. I want to say it was Time Magazine, but it might have been Newsweek, what have you. And this
Mhm.
is during the decline of Black Power. This would be the early to mid 1970s. The cover read "The New Black Power," and it had three black men, three gentlemen who were CEOs of Fortune 50 companies.
Mhm.
And the insinuation was quite simply that the revolutionary nationalist strain of Black Power had failed. And what we were looking at now is Black progress having to come through entering white businesses, white corporations, and what have you. And the best that Black folk could do out of that was to have, if you were a young Black person going into, let's say, IBM, you
Mhm.
needed to grab a hold to the coattails of someone who looked like they were going to make it up into the executive suite. And hopefully they would take you up that corporate ladder with them. That became Black Power. And you could go ahead and let's be very clear about this. You could make quite a good living working for corporate America. However, you would never own it. So in many ways, you're setting yourself up to be the equivalent of a servant class for corporate America.
Wow. So basically, um, the integrationists and the liberal are their idea is to make Black people comfortable as junior partners in a system designed to exploit them. Would
Well,
that be
well, I would I
considered?
would I would argue that their goal is to make Black folk no different than white folk, because the average white person is not going to own these corporations. They're going in there to work too. It creates the idea, if we're being fair and we're being honest about it, of
Mhm.
a servant class and a money managing class. Now, one has to, especially when you're looking at what we're dealing with right now in this society. Is there a middle class?
Supposed to be, but don't look like it.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't a middle class, because the moment that you have a situation where this quote unquote middle class is no longer needed, their throats get cut along with working class people. They're no longer middle class.
Mhm.
So there needs to be a reevaluation of the idea of earnings determining your class. One gentleman explained it to me this way. He said, "This is how you can tell if you're an elite or not. Do you notice when your check post?
Mm.
And if you notice when your check post, You are not elite.
Mhm.
And there are only two classes within capitalism, and are the elites and the non-elites. Let's be
Mhm.
very clear about that.
Mm, mm, mm. Wow.
And so when you're talking about the idea of black power and black uplift within a capitalist nation, and you're not talking about tearing down the impact of capitalism upon black folk, what are you really talking about? You're not talking about even the potential for liberation. Be very clear that the majority of HBCUs, the majority of what it is that we're talking about is predicated upon preparing black kids to go in and work in established white institutions. What other explanation do we have for how many black women lost their jobs and their careers almost overnight? Really, their jobs, because they're not careers. They lost their jobs overnight with the government cuts.
Right.
That's what they were trained and prepared to do, to go in there and work for the US government, a white institution. In the moment that they were no longer needed, they were jettisoned out of there. And one of the things that, I don't care what color you are, black, red, white, yellow, when you're working within these corporations, you're working within capitalism, what have you, you're never the machine. You're not the machine. That machine's going to continue to run if you die tomorrow. They're just going to they plug another spark plug into that spot.
Mhm.
Okay, let's be very clear on that. You're
Mhm.
not the machine, you're the grease. And once the viscosity of grease and oil is gone, what do you do? What do you do with your car? You drive your car to an oil change place. Hey, I'll get this out of here. My car knocking now. Put some more oil in it. It's the same thing with corporate America. The same thing with capitalism.
Mhm.
Same thing with universities.
Doc, you said that they didn't even get together to come up with a common definition
Mhm.
for what they were saying. Do you think that in their heart of hearts, they really didn't want to be free? They just wanted to have equal access in the white man's world. They didn't really want to be free. They wanted to be able to
I
go
mean,
where he go and eat where he eat.
that's the goal. That's freedom for them. That's their definition and their understanding of freedom. I mean,
Wow.
come on. Come
Mm,
on.
mm, mm.
One of my mentors, Dr. William E. Nelson, he told us a story that he was at some event down in Atlanta, that the brother who, it was a brother who was in charge, he was the head of Coca-Cola. He
Mhm.
said, man, look here. That brother's feet didn't touch the ground when he got out that limousine. It was like he glided up in there.
Mm.
Now, will he ever own Coca-Cola? No. But they're paying him so well. It's no different from a figure like William Lee Brent. No, not William Lee Brent. William Gloves O'Neill,
Mhm.
who was the gentleman who gave the layout of Fred Hampton's apartment, where Fred
Right.
Hampton and Mark Clark were killed.
Mhm.
Why? Because he's trying to ingratiate himself to some people who got something they holding over his head. If you don't do this, then we're going to put you in prison. Okay. Karl Marx warned. He said, listen, there are some people out here who are too poor to be loyal.
Mm, mm, mm.
And if you combine economic poverty with moral depravity, where you don't stand for anything, you can't be trusted. You
Mhm.
definitely can't be trusted, because what's going to happen? Someone's going to come along and they're going to be able to see your misery and your suffering. And they're going
Mm,
to offer to go ahead and solve that for you.
mm,
If you do this for me. So is the goal Black liberation, or is the goal to increase one's individual personal socioeconomic status? And I would argue that for the vast majority of our people, it's the latter.
mm, mm, mm. Wow.
I mean,
So
go ahead.
I watched a video the other day about when the cotton gin and they were replacing the
Eli
slaves with the
Whitney.
machine.
Yeah.
And you had one black woman talking about work, and I hope I can find um, this video so that I can show it to you, and you can hear it for yourself. But she was talking about work, and she was talking about how it is now that I got it. Hold on, let me see. All right, I got it. Because when listening to what you're talking about, clearly for me, uh, says that these people, and I don't want to call them leaders per se, because I'm understanding from what you just said about definitions that they couldn't even sit their jackasses down and come up with definitions to understand what's being said. These idiots
Because
were not even real leaders.
yeah, but they're from the very beginning, they're in competition with each other because they're trying to get the same membership base. They're trying to get, for some of them, they're trying to get grants. They're trying to get all of these different things. I mean, come on, let's be, and I think that we talked about this when we talked about Chicago and the friction that happened between Chairman Fred Hampton and Minister Farrakhan. Even the Nation of Islam and the Black Panther Party, when they're in the same city, there isn't much cooperation going on right there. Okay? They're in competition with each other. So if people are in competition with each other, they need to knock out all the competition before they're able to go ahead and begin to really settle down and define some things.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem. And in many ways, and let's be fair to Black folk, it's not endemic to just Black folk. Other groups do the exact same thing.
Yeah, but
White,
it's like
go ahead.
the other groups not in our condition. We're in the worst condition, and I would think that if you really are about the upliftment of our people to get them out of the situation that we are in, that damn it, you would be willing to sit down and work with one another to figure the shit out so that we can get the right program and start moving in the right direction, because this thing is not just going to destroy the present generation. This thing will work itself through generations to come.
They're too poor to think about the future, brother.
Damn.
They're too pressed to think about the future. Think about Kwame Nkrumah. Nkrumah comes back and he's the first Black president of Ghana. Nkrumah told them, he said, Africa is not strong enough to stand on its own. African nations can't stand alone against what Europe is bringing in, what Asia is bringing in. We need to form ourselves together into an alliance. And Nkrumah used the words. He said he's asking for the forming of the United States of Africa. And African leaders laughed and said, yeah, he wants a United States of Africa, but he want to be the president. That's a problem. And that goes directly into your intellectual diet, your psychological state. What do you see when you see other Black folk? And be honest about it. They're not being honest about it.
Wow. That really is just ticks me off, man, because it's like we keep setting ourselves back with foolishness time after time after time. We're going to watch this clip right quick and come back and talk about
it. He got to get out and work now, too.
How old is he?
59.
How much money is he making?
He might make $30 this week.
What about the machines?
They doing that. I think we got five or six running now, picking cotton. on his plate.
Does that put a lot of people out of work?
Sure do. Sure do. I tell you, it's just put them all out work on his plate, excusing the tractor ball. Sure is. Ain't nothing for him to do.
For everything that they picked for $2 or $3 a hundred, I could have done the same thing with this machine and picked for nothing. Let's not deal in numbers. Let's deal in percentages. For instance, I would say that just this year, my workforce was reduced about 50%. And yet I was able to handle the entire operation much easier than I had in the past. But primarily because of the use of these chemicals that we use in weed control. This has been the real breakthrough in the farm area, and the elimination of this handwork is the chemicals that have come along. And I don't argue the fact that this wasn't, that they should have this money, but it's still an economic fact that I have got to make a profit as well. Here are two machines that sell for $20,000 a piece. So like any other businessman, I think when the time comes, we try to eliminate as many of our expenses as we have and try to increase that profit margin.
Do you own this house you live in?
No. This is Mr. Pete's house.
Sigmund's plantation is in Clarksdale, a typical Delta town with little industry. Negroes in the county outnumber the whites by 3 to 1.
Looks like we're going to be able to continue to operate and operate with less people. And of course, being selfish, all of us, thinking in terms of our own desires, yes, we're concerned about these people, but we're concerned mostly about number one. Well, I'm going to be able to continue to farm and pick cotton and continue to put it on the market. I'm concerned personally with the people that live and work with me. And I think most people are, some, of course, more than others. But you sometimes you become immune to it.
You think it's going to change?
I believe it is. I believe it. And I'm hoping it do.
What do you think is going to change it?
Maybe it'll be so, reason I believe it's going to change, maybe it'll be so we can work. Maybe. We'll get a chance to work some. You know, when a person can work and make his own money, he can spend it like he want, can't he?
You have a great deal of respect for work.
That's the only way you can get anything is work. Ain't it? I done worked and got 55 years old and ain't got nothing, ain't it? That look like it's a fool. Look like it's a fool in working, don't it? I've been working, done got 55 years old and ain't got a thing. The man would come here now and tell me, Helen, get out of my house. I wouldn't have a tent to go put on. Get under to put my children on. Now, it don't look like work's good either. No, it ain't. I done found it out. Look like I ought to be done found it out. The more you work, the less you have. I ain't got nothing. And I ain't working. I'm still getting a little something to eat. I got on pretty good old clothes. So it just don't make no difference. It just don't make sense.
Having worked all your life and not having any money at all, does it make you feel
Babe. Sure do. You don't know nothing about working, do you? Do you?
I work?
Do you know anything about cotton?
Hard work?
Sure is. It's pretty hard. It's pretty hard.
And the place I live on, they're not hiring anybody because they said they were going to get the cotton out with the machine. I just don't understand.
So, Doc, just looking at that, and, you know, we can understand exactly what she was saying. We understand exactly what she was saying. When she asked the white boy, you don't work? Do you work? Yeah, I work. No, you don't work. She's 55 years old, and she worked all her life and ain't got a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out. Even the house that she live in, she said it ain't her house.
I mean, the thing is that we can look at that and say, well, that's so pitiful, and that it's unfortunate, it's sad, and what have you. What has changed? The only real difference that you got is that the majority of black folk ain't going out into a field and picking cotton, but ain't much other than that different. You're just going into a maybe an air conditioned office to work. But other than that, no, there ain't much difference. And my argument is quite simply, we think it's bad now. Look for the next 10 to 20 years when the people who were given 401ks, they're not getting pensions. Wait until they hit retirement. It's going to be stiff competition to be a greeter at Walmart, because you're going to have so many people who have nothing coming in beyond Social Security.
I just think that those in that era of when the Black Power stuff started to pop off, they knew these conditions because they lived it. They saw it with themselves. We live in a modern time. They lived back then. And you couldn't find the love that you needed in one another. I mean, just look at the woman's mouth. Damn, we could not find the love for one another to sit our asses down and figure the shit out.
No. And what makes it worse is that when you're looking at, the most radicalized state that we have during that time is California. You got Cal at Berkeley out there. You have Students for a Democratic Society. You got the Panthers out there, the Weathermen, all these very radical, the free love movement, all this radical stuff, right? Okay. They knew it better than other folk. Huey P. Newton is from Monroe, Louisiana. Bobby Seale is from Dallas, Texas. Geronimo Pratt is from Louisiana. Eldridge Cleaver is from Arkansas. Their roots are in this deep South. So one has to really kind of say, well, yeah, they knew, but realistically and honestly, what can black folk who are devoid of capital and got even less common sense do for their people? They're trying to ingratiate themselves to white folk. Hire me, bring me in. I know how to act. When you integrate this company, I know you're only gonna hire one, two of us that you're gonna put out in the front window. So when black folk walk by, they can say, "Oh, they hire black folk. Look at her, she up in there." But real power, real sharing, no. And wealthy white folk, wealthy folk in general, and you can go to Africa and look at them as well. They ain't interested in sharing power with even their own kind. They're just not. One of the, I hate to question God and to say that God made a mistake when he made man, but I believe he did. And that mistake is the fatal flaw of enough is never enough. They're going to always want more. And it's the game. It's the game of life. So when you see a person like this, and although that footage was probably from the 1940s, 50s, maybe the 60s. Okay, I got turned around leaving Memphis, Tennessee. I was on my way to Houston. I was coming back home, and I got to I-12 quick, and I mean quick, to the point where I was like, man, I must have been in like a jet, because it took me no time to get to I-12. I had mistaken reaching I-12, which would have took me to Baton Rouge, and then it would merge to I-10 and take me all the way across to Houston. I wasn't on I-12. I was on State Route 12. And so I had to get some gas. I stopped at this gas station and I go in, they didn't even have the digital scale on their gas pumps. They had the rotating numbers still. Didn't have a credit card thing that you could pay for or what have you. So I had to go in. And I
Right.
go in and I hear these two older white men say to this young brother who looked like he should be playing defensive tackle for the Cowboys, look here, look here. You gonna listen to what I'm telling you or what that nigga done told you?
Mm.
And the brother lowered his head and said, you, sir. Okay. Now, the wise thing to do would have been to turn my butt around and go back the way I came. I didn't do that for whatever reason, thinking that I'm still on I-12. I'm driving past rows and rows and rows of cotton fields. And there was a trailer at the end of those cotton fields with some of those like nylon barbecue chairs that you see that eventually fray
Mhm.
along the edges. There's
Mhm.
white folk there with a barbecue grill at the end, and they were just sitting there. And everything in me wanted to stop and say, yo, check it out. Walk that way till you see a major highway and then walk to Memphis. You're free. People are still doing that to this day. And they can tell you as if they're talking about their genealogy, what plantation their people worked on. Yeah, we spent these many years of working for so and so, and then we moved down here to so and so. They've been picking cotton and doing that stuff the entire time. And the unfortunate thing is that they feel as if they are being cheated out of life when mechanization comes. You're not the machine. You're just you're the grease that oils the machine. And when they no longer need you, they're gonna cut you loose. And I don't care if you're picking cotton or if you're working for the United States government.
Mhm. Mhm. Wow. So, Doc, the call for Black Power emerged as a necessary response to integration. And I would guess to say the liberal push for what they called equality. Um,
Well, but it had failed by that time. And you have to remember that when you're talking about the civil rights movement and
mhm.
the rush to integrate, you're talking about a largely Southern movement. Okay, the
Mhm.
fight to get the vote, the franchise, that's a Southern movement. Black folk who are not in the South are not struggling with the ability to vote. They can vote already. Nobody's obstructing their right to vote. I
Mhm.
remember that Richard Hatcher is elected in Gary, Indiana. Who's the brother? Carl Stokes, Cleveland, Ohio. Maynard Jackson, Atlanta. Black folk are voting during that time, unless you're in like the deep South and these little small towns and what have you. But for the brothers who are in Cali, the brothers in New York, in Connecticut, what have you, they realize early on that the civil rights movement ain't really going to deliver them anything. They can
Mhm.
already vote. The question becomes, how do you force these white folk to loosen their purse strings and pay us more? How do you get these real estate agents to stop redlining and keeping us within the ghetto? Civil rights movement ain't got nothing for that. And when Dr. King tries to go to Chicago and apply nonviolent civil disobedience in Chicago, they get their ass kicked.
Mhm.
You got King on camera saying, "I need some victories," because he knows that the people have lost faith in him. What does
Mhm.
what does Lunch Counter City have to do with black folk who ain't got no job, that have no money to even go and sit down and have lunch?
Right.
When do you turn the tide and say quite simply, well, you know what we're going to do? This is our thing. We're going to push our kids towards getting an education and being entrepreneurs to service the black community. We still aren't there.
So, Doc, I want to try to get this timeline right then.
Mhm.
So, when Stokely and them in the South came up with the Black Power,
That's 65.
that's 65. But those in the North already had the right to vote. That wasn't their issue. So, did they wait?
And you have to remember, Stokely comes out of Howard University.
So, when did the North pick up? Or I guess they didn't pick up the slogan of Black Power until after it came out in the South. But what were they doing, or what were they saying up in the North, since the South was dealing with voting and it didn't have shit to do with them? What was their, I guess, revolutionary move, or what were they doing? Were they just sitting around, just chilling till the next thing popped up?
The activism is happening in the South. Let's be clear about that. When you look at Freedom Summer,
Mm-hmm.
you know, with the abduction and killing of Mickey Schwerner, James Chaney, and Andrew Goodman, those two Jews, they were Northerners. Okay, so the North, if you're an activist, the Northerners are in many ways going ahead and going south, trying to solve those problems and not addressing their own, as if they don't have any problems. So when you have Black Power debut in 65, you had the same year that LBJ signed the Voting Rights Act.
Mm-hmm.
And white folks celebrated and said, we finally conquered racism, this. And then here comes Watts. And you have to remember that American cities burned every summer for a decade. Watts was the first one. Every summer. And the U.S. government even goes and they form this study to figure out why. And do you know what they came up with? It wasn't homelessness. It wasn't unemployment, underemployment. It wasn't any of those things. It was that Black folk get too hot during the summer. And once they get too hot, they get that fever. And this was the advent and the introduction of local public schools and public pools in Black areas. Because all we used to have was what? A watering hole where you go and jump in the lake or the river somewhere. No, they put a pool in there. So when you see your homeboy getting too hot and his eyes get crossed, take him over to that pool, put him in some water. That was their solution to what was wrong with Black America. It wasn't a logical, that they're poor, they're economically impoverished, that they're living almost like they're sharecroppers in an urban environment. That's what King tried to do when he went to Chicago. King is trying to highlight the poverty that Black folk are living in at that time. And he failed.
Now, was that what you're talking about? Was that before they did the commission on the riots and came up with the list of the things, the three top three?
So like the Kerner Commission?
Yeah.
This would have been immediately after this mid-1960s explosion and introduction of Black folk as far as rebelling and things like that. There's really no reason for you to have something like that before the riots start exploding. The biggest thing that you have to worry about when you're dealing with Black folk in urban areas are the riots. And the majority of these riots, especially if you're talking about early civil rights and pre-civil rights, they're coming as a result of white folk going into Black areas and attacking them. Look at the Detroit race riot. That was white folk upset because Black folk, that a black teenage boy had actually offended them swimming at Belle Isle, Lake Michigan. Okay. And he came in because, believe it or not, they had then segregated the water. And they ran a buoy line. The white folks swam on the left side, Black folk on the right side. He came up on the wrong side. They began to throw bricks and bottles. One of them hit that brother in the head, killed him. And then white folk went into Black Detroit and burned it down.
Wow. So let me ask you this: but up north, was blacks riding on the back of the bus up north, or was that just in the South?
One could argue, and this is one of the things that I always say about northern areas, and it shadows what Malcolm said in Malcolm's great quote where he says, "Quit talking about the South. Long as you south of the Canadian border, you South."
Mm-hmm.
People like to look at the North as if it is a bastion of racial progress. It's not. It just simply isn't. I was talking about this. Ironically, I was talking about this yesterday when I had to take my my son Kareem. Let's take Kareem to school.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, I said, yeah, I said, now we had a situation, and I'm in Ohio, and I was in middle school. So this is definitely the mid to late 80s.
Mm-hmm.
The black kids we didn't get a school bus. We didn't have a yellow school bus. The white kids got the yellow school bus. We rode a city bus.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we had to pay 35 cents to ride the Richland County Transit, the RCT. 35 cent there, 35 cent back. And they rode on their own. I didn't go to school with white folk until middle school.
Mm.
So the idea of what black folk were, we were segregated. My family was the first family to move on our street on Dale Avenue. And once we moved in, all the white folk moved out.
Mm.
So that's what you're dealing with. And the thing is that when you're talking about black suffering and black poverty, under those circumstances, there's a negative and a benefit to it. Now, my parents, they had to go and they worked. My mother worked at Gorman Rupp. She worked for a white company. My father was a steel worker, so he worked for a white company. So they have to deal with white folk when they are away from the home. When they came home, despite what white folk were probably thinking, that they had us segregated into a black community or neighborhood, and that we were living in misery or poverty, we relished the peace. Period.
Mm.
You know, it wasn't until middle school, and middle school was hell for me because I was one of the 4 or 5 black kids that they deemed smart enough to be in the college prep track. So we were segregated from all the other black kids who went to school. They called it the B track. Those that they were getting ready for, for the world of work.
Mm-hmm.
And they would put us in, there would be, at best, you might have 2 black kids in a classroom. At best. And we had, and that was our lot in life. Okay. That was our lot in life. That's what and every morning you had to get yourself together because you rode on that city bus to that school. But once that initial bell happened, you didn't see no other black folk. It was just you. 6th grade, I had 1 black teacher. 7th grade, I had 1 black teacher.
Mm.
The rest of my day was totally white. So it's a different type of situation going on. You may not have, we didn't have to sit in the back of the bus, but the back of the bus was where we ended up congregating because we wanted a reprieve from having to deal with them all day.
Mm. You know, Doc, one aspect of this integration of the schools that's never discussed is the black teachers that had to integrate into the white schools.
Mm-hmm.
One, why is that part never discussed? And I'll let you deal with that first before I go to my next question.
Well, I mean, the thing is it's how people conceptualize the idea of education, and it ties directly into what is your perspective of black folk. What do you think about? And I'm talking about black folk. You know, there's not a topic that gets me more riled up Then when I'm dealing with my students and I'm talking about the Brown decision, my students, when I ask them this very simple question, it always angers me. Who were better teachers, black teachers or white teachers?
Mm.
And invariably, they say it was white teachers. Every
Really?
single time. Every time. They believe that the white people were better teachers. And many of them push back against me when I tell them that black folk were better educated. We were more experienced as teachers. We were better. We just had poor facilities and books. But the single greatest determiner of a student's ability to learn is dictated by the person who's at the front of that classroom, period. There ain't no debating about it, ain't any of that. Okay? White women only taught when they couldn't find a husband. Every race got some mud puppies. And when you went off to college, because that's what they sent their daughters off to college to get. They went off to get an MRS. They went off to get married. They didn't go off to get a education. You ever seen the movie Mona Lisa Smile?
I heard about it, but I don't think I've ever seen it.
You should watch it. It's about a white school teacher who goes off to a private school to teach. And she finds that the girls there have no interest at all in learning, that they're trying to get married. It's just who they are and what it is. There's no getting around that. Okay. And for those who were not able to find a husband in year 1 or year 2, you would have to go somewhere and teach. But the moment that you got married, they pulled you out of the classroom because you were now sexually active. And a part of the white educational tradition has always been that teachers have slept with students. You know, me and my mother, we used to play this game. She would be in the kitchen. I would be in the living room, laying on the couch, news on. And depending upon what the description of the crime was, she would scream out black crime or white crime. Okay. And it was a game. We played the game Monday through Friday. Whenever news came on, we would play this game. Let's do it. Let's do it here. Okay. Man walks up into a bank with a shotgun and robs a bank.
White folks.
You think that's white folk? Okay. All right. Man is caught with crack cocaine in his pocket.
Black folks.
Okay. School teacher found sleeping with a middle school student.
White folks.
Because black women ain't gonna risk their career behind some little young boy. So when you're talking about the idea of education, our teachers were better educated. They had more experience. They had to have that because you're trying to keep a job. And when you talk about the process of integration, one of the things that we never talk about is that even with students going from school to school, black teachers had to go from school to school. And it is a given that they do not care. Okay. If you are a black man, a principal, vice principal, or even a teacher, when integration comes, you're going to be out of a job because they're not going to allow you to have any power over white girls. Because in their mind and their understanding of racial dynamics, every black man wants is a white woman.
Right.
And so they prevented that. And so you have a very weird situation where black folk are being displaced within their own community and their own educational institutions. You're not going to have black principals anymore. They got white folk to handle that. And that's going to dictate and determine what it is that your children are going to study and what they are going to learn. Make no mistake about it. It's who they are.
You know, I remember when I was in elementary school and we had one black teacher there, Miss Perry. And, you know, all of us black children, you know, we had no white children in school, but it was filled with white teachers. But all of us wanted to be in Miss Perry's classroom because it was Miss Perry's classroom to be there that it was fun. And I remember only in her classroom, if the class showed out or did something they had no business, she would have a stack of rulers tied together, and she'll make the whole class get in line. And the first person in the beginning of the line, they get a little tap. You know, it wasn't hard and nothing. But as she got going down, you know, the further down to the end you were, the harder the lick got. Now, the white teachers never did nothing like that. They never hit us or anything. Miss Perry was the only one that would do that. But we all loved Miss Perry.
Mhm.
We all wanted to be in her classroom. And I remember she say when class is getting a little ruckus, she would say, "Don't make me put on my gorilla suit. You don't want me to put on my gorilla suit." And we were like, "We don't want you to put on your gorilla suit," you know. So for us, it was like something special if you was in Miss Perry's class versus being in the rest with the other white teachers. And that was elementary school, middle school. When I finally got to high school, then there was a kind of balancing out between black and white teachers. But elementary and middle, majority white teachers. And it was something special to be in a black teacher's classroom. Now, from a child who don't know shit about race, don't know nothing about racism, don't know nothing. But why is it that we knew we wanted to be in Miss Perry's class as elementary children? Why did we want that? Even knowing that if the class got in trouble, she'd pull out them rulers and we'll get a whack. Why did we still want to be in her class?
I think you're shortchanging yourself in regards to not having any understanding of race or racism. You identified with that teacher the same way that I identified with Mr. Roberson, my seventh grade teacher. Miss Jones, who was my sixth grade teacher. I hated Miss Jones. Okay. And when I tell you I hated Miss Jones, brother, I hated Miss Jones. Okay. I was the only black student in Miss Jones's class. Okay. I'm left-handed. And you remember, at least I wasn't like my uncle AC them, where they considered that a sign of the devil and forced him to learn how to write with his right hand. Okay. They at least let me try to use my left hand. Man, my handwriting's horrible. Okay. To the point where, you know, the world is set up for right-handed people. When you think about a notebook, the spiral is on the left hand, on the left side. So think about a left-handed person trying to write over that spiral hump. It's not going to look good. Miss Jones, I'm in the sixth grade. Miss Jones would return my work and have written in red letters across the whole body of it, "This is not college level work." I'm in the sixth grade, Miss Jones. What do you mean it's not college level work? Okay. She did it every single time. I hated her. I would have to do assignments 5-6 times. Hated her. Okay. To show you, you know, I think I talked about this before in this space, how much I hated her. That at Sunday school, when they asked, you know, my Sunday school teacher was Garen Tate. And Garen Tate would ask us, did we have any petitions for the Lord, anything that was pressing in our life, you know, that we need to pray about? I finally spoke up and I said, yeah, I got something. Okay. And he said, well, bring it before the Lord, you know, let the Lord know. I asked God to kill Miss Tate before our class on Monday. Go ahead and take her up out of here, Lord. Okay. Because she ain't right. She ain't one of your children, Lord. Okay. I'm riding home with my mother, and my mother was like, what's going on? You awful quiet. I told her what I prayed for, and she said, oh my God. She said, do you know what a maiden name is? And I said, nope. She said, a maiden name is a woman's name before she gets married. Now, my maiden name was Young. Miss Jones's maiden name is Tate. And I said, oh, okay. She said, you still don't get it, do you? And I said, apparently not. She said, okay, your Sunday school teacher, guaranteed, is Miss Jones's brother.
Mm.
Okay. I go to school on Monday, and Miss Tate looked me in the eye, smiled, and said, God don't answer all prayers, does he? Okay. So it's one of those that we had it different. You know, how many black kids did you have in your class?
All of them was black.
See, now by the time elementary school it was like that, but by middle school, oh no, there was only a handful, and to this day I can still name them. Me, Stephanie Martin, Coretta Jones, James Banks, Mike Drayton. I can still name them. You know, and whenever we talk, it always comes up. Yeah, you remember when we was the chosen ones, and basically in every way harassed the entire time. Yeah. So it's, you know, the idea, it is a fallacious thought and assertion that black folk were not catching hell in non-Southern states. We were, you know, our parents were poor. You know, when you go back and you look at one of my very good friends, Eric Morris, he said this. He said, man, I'm filling out my financial aid form. And I looked at how much my parents netted. And he said, I went back and told him, no. I need y'all numbers for the whole year. And he said, this is the whole year. What are you talking about? Different type of suffering. And when you really break that down, and this is to go back to the idea of sitting down and working something out, what's there to work out? Because you're going to need some capital, some startup capital to make anything happen. And who you going to get that startup capital from? White folk ain't gonna give you no loan to start no business, not at all. And one could argue white folk ain't gonna give poor or ordinary white folk a loan either to start no business. A lot of these businesses that we're seeing are inherited. You know, you look at the Kennedys and Camelot and all of that.
Right.
Papa Joe was a bootlegger. He sold the crack cocaine of his day, alcohol. So the idea of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, how many Americans have done that? Let's just be honest and fair about it. And who has the luxury and the opportunity to do that? You know, I'm dealing right now with my son being in college. I don't want him to go through like I did.
Right.
I had to work my way through college. Okay. Sometimes working 4 or 5 jobs. I want him to have the college experience, to be able to enjoy him, to join a frat if you want to join. You know, that's the natural maturation from first generation to second, I would argue. Okay. You need knowledge, you need access to capital, you need someone whose shoulders you are standing on, and that person's whose shoulders you're standing on, it has to be has to be strong enough economically to not be bothered by you standing on their shoulders. And if you don't have that, you're going to be compromised.
Definitely. You know, one thing that that we definitely have to look at and truly understand is that there's a thing in America where you deal with morality. And I noticed that a lot of these black pastors, when they get on video and they're talking about their president, Donald Trump, and they're always given a moral ground for, you know, treat people fairly, do this, all the moral issues. When the reality is, morality is not a strong point for them. And my understanding is that they have no morality. That's just exactly who they are. They don't have any morality. You're dealing with Satan. You're dealing with a satanic mind. You're not dealing with somebody who sit back and weighs the cost of, this is not the morally right thing to do. So when we're dealing with power and morality, do you think that either our people don't understand power, don't understand that, the president have no morality, that these politicians, some of them don't have morality? You begin to hear some of them start to wake up, like for instance, your girl, Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's starting to speak on moral issues, like the shit just dawned on her that, this shit ain't right. So what is the fundamental problem with us understanding power versus morality in the political structure of America?
I don't think that there is a problem there. Just being honest with you, I don't see that as a problem. What I see is that whether you recognize it or you don't recognize it, what can you do? I see a inability to fight back, if I'm being honest. It isn't that our people think that they're good white folk and they haven't woken up in this. Let's say all of them are woke. Let's say all of them have the consciousness that we have.
Okay.
What can we build? What's the path to building something? One of the things that, and I think about these things from time to time because I'm kind of lecturing about some of them. Right now, my survey course, we're dealing with World War I and the idea of how America changes while the new immigrant soldiers are away. And I told him, I said, who is probably the most important black man in Harlem during this time? And they're like, who? I said, it's Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson, a gangster. Somebody that's involved in prostitution, numbers running, selling alcohol, weed, all of those things. And they're like, well, it seems to me that he would be someone we want to run out of the community. I said, okay, let's say that your grandmother, my dear, she goes ahead and dies. And that white insurance company says, well, we ain't paying this. Same way that with Malcolm's father, with Earl Little. How you gonna get him? How you gonna get her in the ground? White folk ain't gonna give you no loan to bury no black body. Are you crazy? You better leave him out there and let the buzzards pick at him. You gotta go to Bumpy. You gotta go and you gotta go ask him for a loan. Now you gotta pay him back. But that's your only option. And in many ways, we're really talking about the need of capital. Where do you get your capital from? And as long as you have to go somewhere and you have to beg white folk for your capital, people who are benefiting by keeping you boxed out of business, how can you win? Where are the black hedge fund managers? We put our money in hedge funds like everybody else, right?
Right.
So where the black managers at? Or is the only game in town, the only game that we trust, going to be white hedge fund managers? It ties all the way into what do you think about black folk? Do you if your life was on the line, you want a black attorney?
Yeah, I do.
If you had millions of dollars to invest in what have you gonna hire a black man to manage your money, or you going over there with the Jews who know how to work the figures and the numbers? Those are all.
I would still be with the black people.
Yeah, I'm talking about black people, not you. But those are very important questions because they delve right into the idea of who you are psychologically. How do you conceive and are concerned with Black folk? What do you really think about them?
Mm.
And until you feel good about your own, and we're talking about a numbers game, we're talking about a place where collectivism matters. You're probably in a losing battle, man.
And I was thinking about the question that you raised, and I would think that our people that would think like us would understand the importance of getting involved in politics, running and winning, and making that system work for us to the degree that a governor or even president would have to come and say, we're going to kick your ass out of office. And then at that point, like they did during Reconstruction, instead of accepting getting kicked out of office, then our people, we would have worked so diligently that our people would understand now it is time to pick up the gun and go shoot some people in their asses, because revolution has met its mark, because we worked the political system, we voted in whom we want, and now a governor is going to remove us from office because we're being too Black and too strong. We're doing right by our people. Or a president saying, we're going to get you up out of office because you're doing what we would consider the wrong thing. I think at that point, revolution, physical revolution starts. It has to start, because you've done everything right. You've worked the system, you've produced good change for your people, and now higher ones want to throw you out of office. Well, then it's time for a goddamn revolution. We're going to pick up the gun and we're going to bust you in the ass. Period, point blank.
I mean, I hear wholeheartedly what it is you're saying. I really do. And I would like to move the discussion away from the hypothetical.
Okay.
And let's look at when that actually did happen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It did happen with Adam Clayton Powell Jr.
Mm-hmm.
Adam Clayton Powell Jr. held tremendous power.
Sure did.
Within Congress.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He publicly called himself the baddest Negro in America, and he was.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, what happened when them white folk decided that they would strip him of seniority?
Mm-hmm.
Not a damn thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not following. I can't believe I'm gonna say this. My wife is gonna kill me for saying this, but you're not following the advice of Sugar Free. Okay. If you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready.
Mm-hmm.
We're not ready. We're not ready for anything. Even if a killing occurs of somebody that I don't know, that we love and we want to, to go out and mourn or what have you, but we got to rally ourselves together to do that. Let something happen to somebody that look, you know the name.
Mm.
You know the name of who the boogeyman. The name is like Candyman to professors and public figures. Okay, that was recently, killed. Okay, was shot in the neck.
Mm-hmm.
That day, go ahead and say something negative.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're already locked and loaded for you.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. Where's our response like that? Where's the response on the left like that? It doesn't exist. Okay, they ready. Okay, they ain't got to get ready. They are ready, and they are ready to do what they need to do to address you and to kill you. Period. So, in many ways, What did Black America do when Adam Clayton Powell Jr. was stripped?
Right.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Absolutely, positively nothing.
Mhm.
And let's take that real event one step further. What could they have done? And those are the discussions that we avoid. What could they have done? You go out and kill a couple white folk. What's that gonna do?
I think that if our people were organized properly, um, Adam Clayton Powell, if he could have collectively done better in his organizing Black people, not just in Harlem, but in every part where we are, and when they made a move on him, then those of us that are in different cities, we could make a move or should have been able to make a similar political move. And this is the thing, Doc, is that we are not organized. We're not in a manner of thinking that we're literally at war.
Yeah.
We don't think like that. If we look at Hugo Chavez, when he was alive, and the United States government set up a coup to get his ass out of office. Now, they cooled his ass, got his ass out, but when the regular common man and woman in Venezuela found out what happened to their president, they said, bring our president back or we're going to kill all y'all. And what happened? They brought the president back because he did things that connected him, not just connected, but soldered him to his people. Having TV programs every day where he get down there and take phone calls and questions from the people and answer them right there in real time and set up programs that's going to help the poor people in real time. So they understood that their best self-interest was in El Presidente. So when the powers that be moved on El Presidente and got his ass out of there, they moved on them, and that forced them to bring his ass right back. But what should have happened after that, he should have prepared somebody that was going to be coming after him, knowing that the CIA just failed on this one, but they probably will get you on the next one, which they did and gave him cancer. And now he's gone, and Venezuela is in the condition that it is right now, and Trump is actively at war with the Venezuelan nation.
I hear you. But you jumped over a whole lot of things that we ain't got. How can Black folk outside of Minister Farrakhan, name me a Black leader that can communicate with his people that doesn't involve white telecommunications?
There isn't any.
Okay. So you don't have the ability to even speak to your people independently. Okay. You don't have the ability to therefore ingratiate yourself to your people. Okay. The people who are the people that they're for many people, not all, but for many people, their affinity is for reality show and social media stars. That's
Right.
even who they're listening to.
Exactly.
Look at who they follow. One of my students said something that I literally had to stop, and I had to say, "Are you for real?" During the introductions of who they are, where they're from, what their major is, and what have you, I asked them to name either a hero or a shero. Just trying to get to know them a little bit, encourage them to talk in the classroom. And I had a student say to me, my hero is Hosea Williams. Like, okay, yeah, impressive. Okay, National Baptist Convention. Yo, I had never heard anybody say Hosea Williams was their hero. I'm thinking that maybe she's part of the Baptist church or whatever. Because he's the grandfather of Portia Williams, who is one of my idols. So your adoration has nothing to do with all that this man has preached and hollered and screamed and built for Black Baptists. Your adoration flows from the fact that his grandchild is on the Real Housewives of Atlanta. And she said to me, I wasn't aware that he did no whole lot as no preacher. I watch it every day. You know, what is your show me your intellectual diet, and I'll show you your mindset. Okay? When I ordered my students to read Ralph Ellison's The Invisible Man. I just said the Invisible Man. I forgot to say Ralph Ellison, apparently. They brought The Invisible Man to Clear Dude.
Lord have mercy.
When I had a student who asked me if James Baldwin was one of the Baldwin brothers, like Alec and Stephen. We're that far away. And it's because you've allowed people to pour into what is your most precious vessel, the minds of your children. You know, Winston Churchill, if they just looked at white folk history, Winston Churchill said that the greatest investment any nation could make was in books and bottles, education and babies. And here we have our people out here with bonnets on their damn head, talking crazy.
Ain't no way. Ain't no way. Wow. Damn. You know, this is what I just keep thinking, like, where the hell these children, where are you getting these children from that's coming to your class? They don't know shit. It's like, God damn. And this supposed to be the future for us? Ain't no fucking way.
It is. Well, this is the thing, and we're coming up on our homecoming, and this will be. You want to talk about generational warfare? Yeah. When the older alums come and they see what the younger folk, even their dress and their appearance, they are aghast because you've been away too long. Okay, been away too long. You haven't been here to see the gradual degradation and erosion of Black culture and of Black priorities. You haven't. And so it's going to be startling. It's the difference between you seeing your child every day for 2 years and somebody that hasn't seen them for 2 years comes back and be like, man, you done got tall. Man, you done got big. Because you missed that process of them growing tall. They are a lot of people who are not on the front lines with our children have missed that process. And I'll tell you this honestly, that it's either feast or famine with them. They either are really on it and they get it, or they have no intellectual curiosity or no interest in anything that matters. And it's unfortunate. And how do you, out of all the things that you can gift somebody or give someone, intellectual curiosity is not one of them. Now, I can't hear you now.
Okay, so I got this last video that I want to share because it goes into my next question that I have for you before we wrap up. So let me share.
Oh God.
I can't get the dang thing to play.
Go ahead and sing it for us. So somebody can tape it and malign your character.
Mhm. Anyway, I can't get it to play, but as we can see, the little black girl, let me blow it up a little bit. She's in her class. I don't know what grade it is. She's a 6-year-old student, so she's probably in the first grade. And they're singing happy birthday to her. And then the teacher says, well, let me sing you my version of it.
The remix.
She goes like, you look like a monkey and you live in a zoo. And, you know, she goes on with the song. And this is warfare, psychological warfare on our children that we willingly send them to be treated like this. And I wish the video could play because you couldn't see the way the black child is looking as this teacher is singing this to her. So, Doc, my question to you, if the defamation and dehumanization,
Could you take that picture down?
yeah. Let me stop sharing. Okay. So if the defamation and dehumanization of Black people are acts of ideological war, what specific non-negotiable cultural and ideological weapon deprived from Black power and Black nationalist thought must every Black adult be trained to wield to defend the minds of our children against perpetual psychological subjugation?
Number one, we need to inundate our people with multiple forms of literacy. We have to fight back against cultural illiteracy, historical illiteracy, and illiteracy in general, and also have a transfusion of courage. Okay. And this is what I'm often talking about when I talk about how we'll get up in arms and we'll act a fool, I'm gonna kick your ass and blah blah. No. And you can do that later. But at this moment, we need to be ready, locked and loaded, that she'll never teach again. Okay. She should never teach again. Get her up out of there. And until you have the requisite power to make that happen, you're just spitting in the wind. Okay. And this is why you have to battle for your freedom, for your liberation on every front. It ain't enough for you to just be carrying a placard and a sign, okay, protesting something. You need to be registered to vote. Fight on that end. You need to spend your dollar in places that are more receptive to helping the Black community. Every single turn, you need to be fighting. You need to find a way to resist, a way to fight. But the problem is, quite simply, honestly, those are luxuries for many of our people. Many of our people are so busy trying to keep their head above water that they can't even think about anything like that. And that's unfortunate. And the system, the very system, as a matter of fact, ironically, it is it's the Invisible Man. It's Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man. There's a great line in there where they say, just keep that nigger boy running. And that's in many ways what this society does to not just Black folk, but poor folk and working class folk. Keep your ass running. Okay. And anytime that you got away from that job that you're trying to subsist on, you better spend that on finding a way to get another job. So that's us.
All right, Doctor, we're going to move to our closing comment. My last question that I would like you to answer while you're doing your closing comment is, what is the single most critical, non-negotiable price of admission, the sacrifice or commitment that every Black person must be willing to pay or make right now to move from talking about Black power to successfully securing and defending the reality we need as Black people?
Once again, brother, you are right. I get tired of saying the same thing. This is the highlight of my Saturday, especially considering my Yankees then got beat in game one. My Buckeyes are winning, but we down 0-1 to Toronto now. But this is the highlight of my day and really the highlight of my week. I love my time here with you guys and what have you. But what's the single most important thing? You have to, number one, study this stuff. And after you study it and you understand and you've immersed yourself in the literature and the knowledge and what have you, then you got to have the courage to act. You have to do something. I always use this analogy that if you're sitting at a table at a restaurant or even at home and you want some salt in your food, that salt ain't going to magically get up and shake itself onto your food. You got to do something to make it happen. And in many ways, liberation and freedom are going to be the exact same thing. Any movement towards liberation is going to be heavily predicated upon the idea of what is it that you're willing to do? What are you willing to sacrifice? And are you unselfish enough to realize that the small things that you may do, as Huey P. Newton said, we must always remember that to move one grain of sand is to change the world. So whatever those grains of sand are that you're going to move in our battle for liberation, do it. And do it well. And don't shortchange yourself. And don't dare think that you're the only one that's in this battle. You're not in this battle alone. Many of us are in this battle fighting on a daily basis. So the biggest thing is study and learn what it is that you can do, what you need to do, what is a goal, and how do we develop a plan to meet that goal, regardless of what that personal or group goal is that you set for yourself as a participant or as an individual. You got to do it, though. You got to do it. And don't sit around pontificating and having paralysis by analysis, because you're going to learn about this revolutionary struggle by doing it. You're going to make some missteps. Hopefully they don't cost you your life. But that's a part of the learning curve. And once you recognize what that misstep is, you can go ahead and ensure that future generations don't repeat it. And I yield, brother. Love you all.
Love you too, Doc. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I want to take a second and welcome the rest of our audience in. Brother Norma X, peace and blessings. We're glad that you're here. It looked like he's saying,
oh no, man, he had to say that shit. I hope that he a Mets fan. Okay. Because they got as much a chance of winning the World Series now as he do. How shit is that?
And we got Earth Angel 1105 remix, peace and blessings, Queen. It's good to see you in the house. Brother Willie Rivers, peace and blessings, big bro. Glad to see you in the house. Twin Pyramid, peace and blessings. Glad to see you in the house. Tranquil, peace and blessings. Glad to see you in the house as well. Brother Roy, peace and blessings, Brother Roy. It's good to see you in the house. And Mac 285, it's good to see you in the house. Peace and blessings to all y'all. Y'all definitely help make the program go. We love y'all. We ask everybody that's here to like and share the video. Please like and share the video. And I'm going to say for my closing comments, thanks, Doc, for your profound insight. Remember this. Black Power today is the relentless commitment to Black nation building. It is the principle of do for self applied. We must control our economics, protect our institutions, and defend our culture unapologetically and completely. Now, go back to our culture. That bullshit that y'all be looking at on video and all that foolishness, that's not Black culture. That's not Black culture. So we don't defend that foolishness because that is not Black culture. The foundation of our liberation is not in the hands of others. It is in the unity and the organizational capacity of Black people. So go forth this week, mobilize, organize, and build. This is the work. This is the movement. This is Black First. Until next time, we send peace, power, and love. And as we always say, you kill the nigga in you, and I'm going to kill the nigga in me, and our God will reign supreme. Peace, blessings. Assalamu alaikum. Shalom.
Peace.
So you better get the message and get it straight.
You're going to need some bridge work. It's simple as that.
Because we're living in judgment. We're living in implementation.